reminds me of a warm, safe place where I see shine the heart.
In the last house on the left.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about The Last House on the Left, the original and the remake. But before we do that, if you guys like 4K Blu-ray reviews, Blu-ray reviews, some game and some tech reviews along the way, then consider subscribing because we do all that here. So as of lately, I've been going down a bit of a Wes Craven rabbit hole because we're working on a Wes Craven video coming out soon. And I figured I would start from the very beginning, and in 1972 he made a little movie called Last House on the Left. So The Last House on the Left was the first written and directed movie by Wes Craven. This was, there wasn't too many movies at the time, something like this. It was very tense, and I wouldn't say it was very scary. It was more of a thriller versus a horror movie. There were some horror elements in there. It's more of a thriller, as in the two girls that get kidnapped. They're basically trying to survive and escape from this group of lunatics, I guess we'll say. They are not the greatest of people. They kidnapped these two girls, and all the girls were trying to do was buy a little weed, and they ended up kidnapping them, and they took them to the woods right near the girl's house. So she was not even that far from home this entire time, and then just the events that happened in this movie are absolutely terrible for these girls. Now, this again was my first time seeing it, so I actually wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I did not expect what happened. They ended up killing they raped the girls, they killed them, and then they made their way to the girl's house because that was the nearest house from the area of woods they were in. And then the parents ended up finding out after they had taken the people in and let them stay in the spare bedroom, and then they found out during the night, and then they ended up going and trying to kill these people for what they did to their daughter. And that's pretty much how it unrolled, and they ended up killing them all in the end, and not have happily ever after because their daughter did end up dying, but they ended up getting the bad guys at the end. And then in 2008, when they were remaking a lot of these horror movies, they remade The Last House on the Left. They're very similar, but there's a few differences, and I kind of enjoy the remake a little bit more, only because the original was definitely a little slow. It takes a little while for it to pick up, but it's not a bad movie at all. But I think I just enjoy the newer one more, only because, it's, how many years later, 72 to 08, it's a long time.
Do you think so?
There's a lot of technological advances in the equipment, the actors got better, and they just kind of took an already great story and tweaked it. And, the differences were very small. There wasn't, they didn't totally flip the script, and I kind of appreciate what they did with this. So they kept all the characters' names the same, and the one thing I noticed was the main character who... I think they actually changed the role, because in the original, none of them were related, and in the new remake, it was a father, a son, and then just some random girl. But that was the only relation, was the father and the son. And the father was the main character, who was the leader of the gang in the original. His name was Krug. So, if you're familiar with Wes Craven, Freddy Krueger. So, I'm not sure if there's a connection with that, but there was something with that name that he just really liked. And he ended up, a couple films later, making that the main character of his Nightmare on Elm Street series. So, as far as differences go, in the original, the two girls that were kidnapped, they were on their way to go to a concert later that night, and they wanted to score some weed, so they ended up buying it off some junkie who ended up being part of the crew, where in the remake, the girls were visiting a upstate house that the parents owned, and her friend Paige, lived in that area and worked at the convenience store down in town in that area that they were visiting. So they ended up hanging out after work. So while they were at work, this kid Justin comes in, which ended up being the son of Krug, and he comes in and he tries to buy cigarettes, and he's underage, so the girl says, you let me see your ID. He said, how about I sell you some weed and we don't talk about the ID. So they ended up going back to the hotel room. They have a good time with them at the hotel room, smoking the weed and hanging out. And then the rest of the gang comes in. And that's kind of how the original was. They brought the girls up to buy the weed. Everyone was already in the hotel room, so that was one of the differences. Later on in the movie, when the mother tries to seduce Francis and she takes him out into the woods, she ends up biting his wiener off in the original, and in the new one, it never gets that far, and she figures out who it is. She's pouring him a bottle of wine. He turns around, and he sees the girl's picture on the mantle by the fireplace, so she blasts him in the back of the head with a wine bottle, and then the husband comes in and they ended up drowning him in the sink and putting his arm in the garbage disposal. So, it's either way, they're still cool ways to get rid of the character, but those are some of the bigger differences that I noticed. And one of the biggest differences between the two is in the original, both girls do not survive. They ended up both dying, and again, the parents are the only ones that survived. And in the remake, the one girl dies, but the parents ended up saving their daughter, which was Mary, and she ended up surviving. So that was the biggest difference. And either way, I think both work for me. Again, I think I prefer the remake only because this is just a very old movie, and I wouldn't say it's dated, but it still holds up. It's still worth a watch, and it is Wes Craven's original film. But I think I like what they did better with the remake, and it's just the quality is a little bit better just because it's a much newer movie. The Last House on the Left by Wes Craven, I think this influenced a ton of horror directors and writers out there, because without this movie, we probably wouldn't have half the movies we have today. And we wouldn't have probably half of the Wes Craven movies, or any Wes Craven movies we have today, if it wasn't for this, because this was a pretty successful film for him at the time. So overall, I enjoyed both movies. On the edge of your seat thrillers, it's a terrifying experience for these girls, and some of the scenes are a little hard to watch, because they get pretty graphic with some of the stuff on the screen. And even I wouldn't say the actors, but the characters themselves, when some of these things happen, they're like, holy shit. So, and, I'm not going to go into detail with any of this, but if you've seen these movies before, you probably know what I'm talking about. And they are definitely worth the watch. I really enjoyed my time with them. Again, I prefer the remake a little bit more. So now I'll talk a little bit on the Blu-ray releases. Now, I believe The Last House on the Left has an Arrow Video release, the original Wes Craven. I just have the regular release from MGM. I do not have the Arrow Video version. So this movie is from 1972, and it is not the best Blu-ray I've ever seen. It's still very watchable, but again, it's just very dated. As far as the audio goes for this, it's just a mono DTS HD track, so it is all front channel, and your receiver could upscale it and add some more channels to it, but it was not designed for that. So this is going to be a very front heavy movie. All the sound's going to come from those front speakers, and as visuals go, it was not pretty, but it wasn't a terrible thing. It wasn't VHS quality, but it's still watchable. But again, it's a very old movie, so I guess the source material itself was not the cleanest. As far as the remake goes, this looked great. It's a somewhat new Blu-ray. It's only about 10 years old at this point, a little over, and it's modern times, modern technology, modern cameras. Everything looked fine on it. I think this would actually help if this came out on 4K with the HDR, because this is a very dark movie. There's a lot of dark scenes, and I think the HDR would really, really help clean up a lot of stuff in the shadows and those just very dark scenes, because a lot of this happens at, the second act of this, or last act, whatever you want to say, happens at night, and I think the HDR really lends itself to this. Really make the viewing experience perfect. As far as the audio goes, this had a DTS Master Audio 5.1. So it sounded good, it's leaps and bounds above the original as far as the audio design goes. But again, it's the time. and it's just new technology. That's how it was filmed. That's how it was designed. But it sounded great. You know, there's a lot of rain at the end of the movie, and it's coming through the back speakers, and it really immerses you in the sound. But the audio design for a horror movie sounded fantastic with this, and it looked great. I hope both of them come to 4K one day, because I would definitely upgrade both. So that's going to wrap it up for me here today.
Hey everyone, John here to save the video.
Okay, I'm gonna save it with the solo.
Sorry I had to stare at Matt's face for 10 straight minutes. I know that could be nauseating, believe me, I've been there. But we're here anyway to ask this week's 2 digital code giveaway questions. For anyone who's new to the channel, we do this every single week. So in Friday's video, I'll ask you 2 questions. All you have to do is answer one in the comment section below. Feel free to answer both. I'm not going to stop you. And that gives you the chance at any of the digital codes that you see on your screen right now. You'll come back to Monday's video. Everybody's names will be on one magic wheel. We'll spin that wheel twice. And the 2 names that it lands on, those 2 people have their choice of any of these digital codes. So what are this week's 2 digital code giveaway questions? Well, the first one's simple. Since we've had 2 days in a row of Wes Craven videos, I'm going to ask you guys, what is your favorite Wes Craven film? And then the second question, because I know not everybody who watches our videos are into horror, I'm going to ask you guys, what is your favorite TV show of all time? I figure with Rings of Power and the House of the Dragon being on and a lot of great TV shows, and we haven't really talked about them much lately here on the channel, even though Atlanta's back and I would really love to dive into doing Atlanta reviews again. I just want to know, everyone who's a fan of the channel, what their favorite TV show is of all time. Now, that doesn't have to be a drama or anything. Hey, if your favorite TV show of all time is Married with Children, The Simpsons, or Rocko's Modern Life, that's cool. My favorite TV show of all time is Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You know, it just brings me joy, it brings me happiness. We all have our favorites. I'm just wondering, what's your favorite TV show? Is it something that's more comforting, or is it a drama like Breaking Bad? Please leave your answers in the comments section below. And remember, you only got to answer one of those questions, so you don't have to answer both. And as always, guys, nothing helps out the channel more than by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And then I want you guys to all go out.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.